Hey, what's up, everyone? This is me, Dre. Now, I wanted to weigh in. Took a couple of days, but I wanted to weigh in because recently President Obama, he addressed the nation with his plans to enact an executive order for stricter gun controls. Now, every time there seems to be some sort of mass shooting, people are crying out for stricter gun controls. A lot of these mass shootings are committed by people who've obtained firearms through legal methods. So enacting stricter gun controls at the behest of citizens who've been impacted negatively by these mass shootings and other gun violence, it's not going to serve a purpose. And as I said in several other videos, if people really want guns and they don't go through a legal method, they're going to get it through an illegal method. But also, during the course of his speech, when he was talking about some of the gun violence that's been happening here in the United States, he happened to mention the deaths of the young kids at Sandy Hook, to which he got very emotional. Now, when Adam Lanza waltzed into that school and committed the shootings, at the press conference when Obama addressed the nation at that time, he got very emotional. The thought of seeing 7, 8-year-old kids whose bodies are riddled with bullets broke this man down. And when he had his speech the other day, it took him back to that thought of seeing those young kids' dead bodies. While he wasn't there, he didn't see it. I'm pretty sure he probably saw photos, but also to hear the cries of mothers and fathers who lost their kids. And this was a cowardly act by Adam Lanza. So he got very emotional and started crying. And then afterwards, you had the talking heads from news outlets such as Fox News and other conservative-minded news outlets. And a lot of them questioned the authenticity of his emotion and his tears. And it's a very sad day and age where they wanted to focus more on San Bernardino, where the mass shootings were committed by someone of brown skin, while deflecting away from the domestic terrorism, especially by those who have white skin, such as Robert Deere, Adam Lanza, Jared Lee Loughner, Dylan Klebold, Eric Harris. So, and that's typical. I've said this in a lot of my videos, and I know this comment section, when people get a hold of that, there's going to be some that agree with me, and then there's going to be the assholes that are going to try to deflect and talk about black on black crime. But when it comes to gun control and the purpose of Obama and this speech and his emotion, it's odd that white people, typically white people, will deflect away from what other white people do negatively, because when these mass shootings take place, it's not so much about black on black crime, because in the last 15, 20 years, when it comes to mass shootings where a single or maybe two people impacted a large group of people in a setting, really there's only 2 instances. And we're talking about Aaron Alexis, where that happened about 2 or 3 years ago at the Navy shipyard. And then you have Malvo and that young teen, the DC sniper. But there's very few times where you're going to hear about mass shootings, with the exception of Cho, the Virginia Tech mass shooter. But the majority of the times, you're talking about white people committing mass shootings. You have Elliot Rogers, son of Peter Rogers, the co-director for the Hunger Games. But people don't want to talk about that. They want to deflect and say, we want stricter gun control because we're afraid of ISIS. We're afraid of Muslims. We're afraid of people with brown skin or black skin committing mass shootings. But that shit's not happening. And that's what they were talking about when I saw a video where all these other news outlets were talking about Obama being fake. And again, people are going to disagree with this video, and I really don't give a fuck. But the truth, unfortunately, some people, they don't want to hear the truth. And the truth is this: when these mass shootings are taking place, it's usually white people that are crawling out to the government to say, we need stricter gun controls. And people of all colors, all ethnicities, all backgrounds are going and getting these guns through legal methods. And then some are snapping and committing these crimes. But when you talk about black on black crime, which is the typical deflection of whites and non-blacks who want to target blacks, especially in retaliation to a video like this, no one gives a fuck about those type of shootings in Chicago, Philadelphia, Detroit, a lot of these cities where it's a higher population of black people. If Tyrone kills Junebug, it's basically ethnic cleansing. No one gives a fuck about that, but no one's focusing on the impacted families, the candlelight vigils, people meeting up in churches or town hall meetings and saying, hey, in our black community, we need to do something about the senseless violence. We need to get these illegal guns off the street, and that's a key thing. A lot of these shootings, some of them in the black communities, they are through illegal gun use, and some are done through people who've obtained the guns legally. But no one gives a shit when black people go to Congress or speak to the city hall and the city government talking about, we need better gun controls. But all of a sudden, when you have a mass shooting in which white people are negatively impacted, especially when it comes to Abdulaziz in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where he shot up the 4 service members, or in San Bernardino, where the 2 Muslims were said to have pledged their allegiance to ISIS, but still nothing has been put forward. They haven't been forthcoming with any videos or documentation or any proof. Simply because they're Muslim, all of a sudden they're basically terrorists. Well, what about the terrorists who took over the federal government building in Oregon? Those are domestic terrorists. Timothy McVeigh blowing up a goddamn building in Oklahoma. That's domestic terrorism. And I've mentioned all the names. Jerry Lee Loughner going into Safeway in Tucson, Arizona, to where that politician was, and killing about 13 to 26 people. James Holmes, people wanting to go to a fucking movie theater to enjoy the movie premiere, and he kills people. Robert Deere in Colorado, going to a Planned Parenthood facility and killing 3 or 4 people. Domestic terrorists, and no one's calling it that. They're calling him mentally deranged, sick in the head. But if you got brown skin, you're the one that's a terrorist. So when Obama's addressing the nation about white people that were negatively impacted and the gun controls that white people are calling for the government to enact, all of a sudden he's not being authentic, and people are scorning him because they're too busy focused on ISIS and Muslims that commit crimes. And really, there hasn't been one terrorist act committed by someone who's Muslim or ISIS in this country. But the media is trying to paint the narrative that there is. But all of a sudden, these motherfuckers in Oregon, they're considered patriots, not domestic terrorists. There's not a single law enforcement agent in sight. They allow the media in. There's very few cops in sight. But the Black Lives Matter organization, they can go to the Mall of America, and next thing you know, you have hundreds of cops in riot gear. So you don't see the disparaging difference there. But then again, if you have a problem with that, chances are you're either coon or you're white. And if you're not calling the people in Oregon or any of these white mass shooters, which a lot of the reasons why we have these calls for gun control, if you're not calling them domestic terrorists, you're also part of the fucking problem. Anyway, if you like this video, hope that you like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to check me out on Facebook. Peace.